welcome back to my next video. My name, and will forever always be my name, is Rosalie. And that's my dad. This is my cat, and that's my other cat. I am so sorry, I did not mean to wake you. But today we're doing a Christmas story. That's all I know about it, and yeah.
Yeah, and it's an old story. It's actually was written long before I was born, which we know that was a long time ago.
Centuries ago, like in the medieval times.
It's about the real legit meaning of Christmas.
Legitness.
Yes, this is a
legitness
vlog tonight.
Legit.
And it's interesting. It's right here at Christmas time, and we hear a lot about the meaning of Christmas.
Presents, but it's not about them.
Right, it's not about the presents.
As Jordan once said at a performance we were doing, it's not all about the presents, kids. And
also we have the Hallmark movies that are always talking
always about the girl who gets the guy. And it's not like, why can't the guy get the girl? Or like, why can't the freaking kid be a part of this? Why can't the kid find his long-lost best friend who was driving on a motorcycle one night and then disappeared?
Don't forget precocious kid. The kid has to be precocious. Also,
too many stereotypes!
Also, there's usually a dog.
Always the dog.
And fake snow.
And fake snow.
But a lot of those themes are around finding love, finding happiness, forgiveness, what else? Saving the family store.
Don't like that one.
Moving from the big city to the small town.
I'd rather go.
It's never the other way around.
I know, which kind of sucks.
It's like, hey, we're going to New York City.
Yay!
It's interesting. People just kind of tiptoe around the meaning of Christmas.
Yeah.
They imply that you should know it,
yeah,
but they don't really get into, like...
Which is kind of weird. Oh, be free, child!
So, there was a journalist named Paul Harvey. Have you ever heard of him?
That's what that thing was!
Yes, he's a journalist. And he did this Christmas story that he used to do every year called The Man and the Birds. And I researched it on Wikipedia. Mm-hmm. And you know what a reliable source Wikipedia is.
And Dr. MD.
and it turns out, and you're just gonna flip over this, that it was actually The Man and the Birds was actually written by a guy named Lewis Castles, who was a journalist from, wait for it,
Herald.
South Carolina. Yes.
I'm okay.
Yeah, and he.
Wow, South Carolina.
He was a journalist, but he wrote a lot of religious stuff
too. Cold.
And Paul Harvey took it and he changed a few words around, and read it on the radio.
Nothing.
He's allowed to. You made it famous.
Okay.
You know, it's like one singer doing another singer song.
True.
And Paul Harvey, I just wanted to let you know, he normally would do these little clips where, like he would start with telling you about some guy who was down and out on his luck, and he was a chemist, and he was trying to invent a new type of plastic, you know, that would make tons of money for him. But every experiment he tried failed, and then he would cut to a commercial. He would actually do commercials during his broadcast. You know, like, I always use Anacin when I have a headache. And then he'd come back and he says, and now the rest of the story. And then you'd find out that the chemist actually made this new by accident made this new plastic that was easy to squish, and it would you could use it to put on newsprint and copy the newsprint and all that. So he ended up selling it to a toy company, and it became Silly Putty, and he made millions of dollars. And and that's the rest of the story.
We still use Silly Putty.
I know, that's what I'm saying. So that was the kind of stuff he would talk about. And the thing that was great about him, though, looking back, was he was like the master of the pregnant pause. You know what the pregnant pause is?
No.
Pregnant pause is like when you're talking and then you pause for a second. Mm-hmm. And then you pause, like, you know, longer than you normally would.
So, like, hey, did you ever hear about the guy who did a total hug fest?
And so we have a sample here of Paul Harvey. This is what Paul Harvey sounded like when he signed off.
Will be made public. Paul Harvey. Good day.
Good day.
This was the JFK.
Don't you like the pregnant pause? I think we need to bring back the pregnant pause.
I just brought it back.
So this is the story that he read that moved so many people. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
For the
Hold on,
true,
let me grab onto my
legit
scissors.
meaning of Christmas. Right here. I'm throwing it down.
Legitness.
The man who I'm going to introduce you to is not a Scrooge. He was a decent, mostly good man. And by the way, this is a parable. You know what a parable is?
Mm-hmm.
What is a parable?
I don't know.
Famous parables are like the
Stanley Parable?
no.
It's a video game. Okay.
I'm crossing it. All right, sorry, I forget. Or like the what's the Good Samaritan?
Oh. I just
And
said one.
Which one?
Stanley Parable.
What's the Stanley? I've never heard of the Stanley Parable.
It's a video game. It's about this parable about this guy who can never leave his office. Because the video game won't let him win.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Told you.
Maybe we'll just skip the parable part.
Okay.
All right. Good.
Yeah.
And here we go. The man whom I'm going to introduce you to was not a Scrooge. He was a decent, mostly good man, generous to his family, upright in his dealings with other men. But he just didn't believe all that incarnation stuff which the churches proclaim at Christmas time.
Wait, what?
Incarnation.
No, I know what incarnation is, but what?
Yeah. Do you not know anybody who doesn't believe? All right.
We're just going to skip that because I'm going to
it just didn't make sense, and he was too honest to pretend otherwise. He just couldn't swallow the Jesus story about God coming to earth as a man.
Well, I mean, it happened.
I'm truly sorry to distress you, he told his wife, but I'm not going with you to church this Christmas Eve.
Oh, no.
He said,
are you sick, son?
He said he'd feel like a hypocrite. And that he'd much
then
rather...
you are a hypocrite if you feel like one.
And that he'd much rather stay at home. And that he would wait up for them. And so he stayed, and they went to the midnight service. Shortly after the family drove away in the car...
We have 2 services, Sunday and Monday. Check those out at shandonbaptist.org.
Right.
Thank you.
Shortly after
it's a simple plug, because we have merch. Buy it. We have hoodies and shirts. And also jackets.
Shortly after the family drove away in the car, snow began to fall. He went to the window to watch the flurries getting heavier and heavier, and then went back to his fireside chair and began to read his newspaper. Minutes later, he was startled by a thudding sound. And then another. And then another. sort of a thump or a thud. At first, he thought someone must be throwing snowballs against his living room window. All right, that's enough. It wasn't that many. All right.
I did it.
At first, he thought... Now, this is where it gets serious. So straighten up. At first, he thought someone must be throwing snowballs against his living room window. Then, he went to the front door to investigate. He found a flock of birds huddled miserably in the snow.
Like this.
They'd been caught in the storm, and in a desperate search for shelter, they had tried to fly through his large landscape window. Well, he couldn't let the poor creatures lie out there and freeze, so he remembered the barn where his children stabled their pony. That would provide a warm shelter if he could direct the birds to it. Quickly, he put on a coat and galoshes, tramped through the deepening snow to the barn. He opened the doors wide and turned on a light, but the birds did not come in. He figured food would entice them, so he hurried back to the house, fetched breadcrumbs, sprinkled them on the snow, making a trail to the yellow-lighted, wide-open doorway of the stable. But to his dismay, the birds ignored the breadcrumbs and continued to flap around helplessly in the snow. He tried catching them. He tried shooing them into the barn by walking around them and waving his arms. Instead, they scattered in every direction, except into the warm, lighted barn. And then he realized that they were afraid of him. To them, he reasoned, I am a strange and terrifying creature. If only I could think of some way to let them know that they can trust me, that I am not trying to hurt them, but to help them. But how? Because any move he made tended to frighten them or confuse them. They just would not follow. They would not be led or shooed because they feared him. And he said, if only I could be a bird, he thought to himself, and mingle with them and speak their language, then I could tell them not to be afraid. And I could show them the way to the safe, warm barn. But I would have to be one of them so that they could see and hear and understand. And at that moment, the church bells began to ring. The sound reached his ears above the sound of the wind, and he stood there listening to the bells, Adeste Fideles, listening to the bells pealing the glad tidings of Christmas, and he sank to his knees in the snow. The end.
That was the shortest story I've ever had.
Yeah.
That was pretty good. That was knowledge.
Yeah, there are different parts of the Bible where you can read about the Christmas story, right?
Yeah.
And there's
all the way
Matthew,
like back to John.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. But Matthew and Luke are the ones that give the most details
and then John
about the birth in the manger. I mean, there are several favorite parts. Like, what's your favorite part of the Christmas story?
Like the Jesus Christmas story, like the Christmas story.
Yeah, the Jesus Christmas story. Yeah, like the Mary and Joseph on the donkey, or
the wise men coming after 5 months.
Yeah, the wise men showing up and tricking Herod. Yeah, and to
also I just want to point out, they did not come on Christmas Eve. That's just a whole
lie. The wise men came later. What about the shepherds?
The shepherds, they were just tending their sheep.
Saying, how do you say you would put the wise men over the shepherds?
What? No, the shepherds are equally as good. What are you?
I'm just messing with you.
My face is like.
But it was interesting that you brought up John first. Because John is the one that actually has the shortest Christmas story. Because remember, it starts, in the beginning was the Word.
And the Word was
God. And the Word was with God. And then do you remember what John 1:14 said? And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us.
Knew it!
Yeah. So John was the thinking man. Yeah, John was the thinking man's apostle. And it was that sort of Christmas story that he talked about so long ago that Paul Harvey repeated. Yeah. So what do you think? Is that legit?
Legit. Knowledgeable. I would actually say, read this.
We just read it.
Well, I know, but just read it on your own time and think. Well, this has been Rosalie, signing up. Good day. No. Well, thank you.
Say, this is Rosalie. Good day. Yeah,
good day.
Good day.
Good day. Good day.
Good day.
Okay.
All right.
Well, this this has been a fun ride. Thank you for
Are you
coming
never
in.
going to slap my hand?
Well, this has been a great experience. Thank you for letting me in my bedroom. That was really nice of you. I will see you in the next video. This is Rosalie. Good day.